Lightning like Steve McQueen. I'm in the fast lane when the light turns green. And I built tough, I ain't nothing but grit. Cause I made rugged blood, sweat, and spit. Yeah, like a horse I fly. Better brace yourself in for a bumpy ride. I like to play hard, but I work harder. And I weather the storm cause I'm built stronger.
Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by Denim. As a business owner myself, I personally know the importance of financial stability and preserving cash flow to help navigate through any freight market. With Denim's comprehensive service offering, you now have an all-in-one financial partner whose platform includes factoring, payments, freight audit, document collection management, and analytics, which help keep your business financially healthy and increase your team's time to focus on revenue-producing activities. You can also take advantage of Denim's free credit check, which they perform on all of your customers. And Denim will proactively reach out to you if they spot any signs of credit deterioration. Finally, Denim always pays your carriers first. As a broker, this is imperative to preserving your credit score in the market, which ultimately helps you become a broker of choice to your carrier partners. Are you ready to learn more? Visit denim.com to schedule a demo today. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines, you guys, but most importantly, we're just here to provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight. I only speak to transportation professionals on this show, you guys, because that's what I am. I'm a transportation professional, and I want to bring the individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve, so you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Corey Buchan, happy Monday over on YouTube. John Paradise, good to be back. Happy Monday as well. He's over on YouTube. Sunny Sharma, good morning, Orange Shirt Gang, over on LinkedIn. I go live on LinkedIn and YouTube, you guys, and check them out. Check me out on any platform that you're on. Let me see here. I got a very special guest for you guys here who I'm going to bring up here shortly. But just another quick announcement here. We got a newsletter that drops every single Wednesday, you guys. So if you guys want to register for that, just go over to thefreightcoach.com and it will auto prompt you to do it. I'm not going to auto sign anybody up just because I have your email address. I'm not going to sell it out there to anybody because it annoys the shit out of me when people do that to me. And I'm not going to do that to you guys. So if you guys want that, it's a weekly newsletter, drops every single Wednesday. Just go over to thefreightcoach.com and register for that. But I got a very special guest for you guys here. I'm going to bring them up right now. Weather personally affected my book of business last week by like a pretty substantial amount. And we're going to talk about that, you guys, and predicting it and the effects that it has on the overall supply chain. So I got my man Scott with Weather Optics back on the show. Scott, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah. Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No, man, it was funny as we were kind of talking when we began, where it was just like, I got the hurricane that went through there last week. I was like, God, this sucks. And then I'm like, I got to get Scott back on the show. Like my first thought was Weather Optics and getting you guys back on the show and how we can kind of break this down. So what's good, man?
First of all, I'm glad that you thought that's exactly what I want, right? When there's bad weather that happens, I want you to think of me and of Weather Optics. So I'm glad to hear that was your first thought. And it's been a crazy kind of start to hurricane season. We're at the very start of it. We've had Beryl, we've had Debbie. Those are the only two that have really made an impact on the U.S. So long way to go. Peak of hurricane season September 10th. So there's a good amount on the horizon for sure.
No, it's pretty insane when you think about it, right? Because like we're in the middle of like a 50 load project out of the port of Savannah. And it stopped like 30 containers. It delayed 30 containers from getting offloaded. The port was shut down essentially 2 days last week. On Tuesday, it was shut down completely. Wednesday, it reopened, but it didn't start offloading ships until Wednesday after late afternoon, early evening. So then there was that residual effect that came through with that. And then, if you're out there doing any port work, like we had 28 of our 30 containers offloaded on Friday and today. So it's like they were supposed to be spaced out a little bit more. So now it kind of jammed it up. And then we have delivery appointments that we have to schedule for all of these. So there's a big trickle down effect on this. And this is why I wanted you to come on so we can talk about this and predict this a little bit more to really help out all parties involved here, because, ultimately it affects the carriers, because like they, prior to, weather events, they could get possibly 2 or 3 or 4 turns in depending on the schedule. And now they might cut that in half. So they're losing out on revenue. Receivers are getting backed up because they only have so many appointment slots that they can take. So again, like there's big after effects that can kind of happen with all of this.
Totally. And Savannah was impacted. Charleston was impacted. There was a couple of other key ports that were impacted. But, when you have a really big weather system and there's multiple locations, that ripple effect multiplies by 5, 10, 15, because all of a sudden you have a lot of key locations that are backed up. And like you were saying, appointment times are pushed back, carriers are delayed. There's a whole host of issues that happen. So when it came to Debbie, as much as a headache it seemed like that it caused for you, overall, there were a lot of, I would say, companies that were lucky as well that there weren't worse effects. The original forecast for that storm was supposed to be much more significant in Savannah, Charleston, to Florida, up the East Coast. So it's always a good reminder, right, that like, these storms happen, and sometimes they're even worse than what we just experienced.
Yeah, it's I think that it could have been definitely a lot worse, right? I mean, ultimately it was only one day that it really got shut down, but I mean, I saw a lot because like out of this, because we use the same handful of carriers to do all this stuff, right? So we have 4 carriers that are doing all 50 of these containers for us. And, a couple of them were like, hey, we're actually shutting our fleet down all week because we just don't want to risk it. And, again, I'm never going to ask anybody to drive like that. Like I'm a human being as well. Like I personally feel that no truckload is worth a human life by any stretch of the imagination. And, so again, it is just planning all of this stuff out there. So, you brought up hurricane season is just starting here. What is hurricane season? How long does it typically last? And is it just the Gulf region that it affects? Kind of walk us through that.
So hurricane season technically goes from June 1 all the way to November. So it's a really long stretch of time, but typically when we get the most hurricanes are August and September, and the peak of the season is September 10th. In recent years, we've been seeing earlier and earlier hurricanes. This is another good example of that. Like we're way ahead of schedule of where we typically should be for hurricane season. But the season itself expands over a really long time period where basically any tropical system could develop anywhere in the Atlantic. Could be the Gulf of Mexico, could be the Pacific. Most often we see the biggest issues, right? Like along the Gulf Shore, up to parts of the East Coast. It's been knock on wood, a number of years since we've had stuff probably north of like North Carolina. But what we saw with Debbie was we had a landfall in Florida, then we had a landfall in South Carolina, and then it kind of crawled up the coast. So we ended up seeing like a week and a half of really, really bad weather. And so that's something that's always a risk as well, even if it landfalls somewhere totally different. The ripple effects of the storm itself could be much farther reaching.
So how are you guys working with people about, the predictive side of this stuff, right? So it's like, we all know that it's hurricane season right now. We all know that there's snow that's eventually going to fly here in the next couple of months in certain parts of the country. So how are you guys working with people from a predictive standpoint?
For us, it's really about planning and execution, right? So like giving companies the notice that certain lanes in the country are going to be shut down because of weather. So at the end of the day, we're a weather company, but we combine it with transportation data. And then that allows us to give very specific insights on, this corridor or this shipment that you have planned, or these shipments that are coming in. they're going to be impacted by weather. And then we take that a step further. We say, this is going to be the delay time. Here's a route alternative you can take. Here's a better time that you could also leave at that would avoid the weather. So it's kind of like weather on steroids, where we're not just telling you it's going to rain or wind or there's a hurricane. We're telling you, here's what's actually going to happen in your transportation operations. And here's some things that you can do to prevent some of those bad effects from happening.
So you mentioned you're a weather company there, and I just realized it's probably been a while since you were on the show. For those of you out there, that don't know what Weather Optics is, what service do you guys provide out there?
Yeah, so we call ourselves a weather intelligence platform, which really means we take weather data and then we take a bunch of business impact data and we translate that into like tidbits and insights. So mostly all of the data that we provide are these 0 to 10 risk scores. We tell you either it's a 0 and there's going to be no impacts of weather on your business operations, or it's a 10 and things are going to be shut down. There's going to be days of impacts, or somewhere in between, right? So everything we do is just translating weather data into insights that make sense for truckers, for 3PLs, for insurance. It's all about like speaking the language of the industry, because at the end of the day, what does 7 inches of snow mean in Nashville versus Chicago versus Buffalo, New York? A lot of that is confusing. It's time consuming. Companies tend to have like a weather person at their company that's doing a lot of that tracking. We're trying to remove a lot of the guesswork for you and just give you information that matters, and that's important.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Turner says right here that Debbie messed up Southern New York and Upper PA all weekend. My town's volunteer fire department were out doing cleanups and pump outs for homes and communities and everything else. And, because I think like, a lot of people are, I'm out here in Arizona, right? Like the only bad weather we get is excessive heat over the summer. And it's not even that excessive. If you live here, yeah, it sucks during the moment, but like you're kind of used to it. Anybody who says it's a heat wave in Arizona is clearly not living here. Like it's always hot,
Right. Yeah.
But I look at that and, you look at Debbie alone, what that caused and the delays and the after effects, and then how it's not just the coastal region that it affects, because think about it like this. If you're, if you're in the industry at all, say, all the ships come through the ports and then they go into inland distribution, and then inland distribution out throughout the rest of the country. So it's like, think about the after effects of those little stores, because it seems like it's like, oh, it doesn't affect me if I'm living in Kansas, but it's like if your local, Walmart or your local store imports everything through a port that's affected by that, you will see that. So it's like you need to be prepared for those events, and you need to pay attention to that stuff too, because it's like you just never know, right? You're one component of your entire manufacturing line might come through the port of Savannah and everything else comes through the port of LA, or whatever that looks like, right? So there are definite things that you need to pay attention to. And then again, I think of it like a staging effect. I know like FEMA, that you can say what you want about FEMA and some of the, the Red Cross, but they bulk prepare for a lot of these things where they'll see a storm coming and then they'll shift all their resources to go into that area. So it's like from a transportation perspective, those are opportunities as well for people to go in there.
For sure. Those type of like black swan events where there's a hurricane or there's some kind of, major weather event, and FEMA is requiring loads of, supplies to come through a certain area, that is an opportunity. It has a ripple effect on, pricing as well, right? Like how the spot market works. There's a whole host of things that happens, even when a storm is isolated to a small area. And as you were saying, if it is a small area that is a large enough port or distribution hub, I mean, it could even be in the center of the country, right? A tornado goes through, or some kind of ice event we saw this past winter. It could have ripple effects everywhere, especially for those large retailers, big shippers that are traveling all over the country. We've been seeing a lot of that more and more often.
Yeah. And I think that, I just look at it from a predictive standpoint, like that's the thing I look for the most in all the data that's out there, whether it's rating data or weather data. It's more of kind of getting in front of it as a broker, right? Because a lot of brokers out there might be thinking, well, what does this have to do with me? I think this has everything to do with you. Like, again, how are you setting your drivers up for success? I'll always come back to, a story that because we used to move a lot of freight out of Texas going up into like Wyoming and stuff like that, Wyoming and Montana. And, just like I said, I live in Arizona. We're in shorts 12 months out of the year, essentially, but sometimes you get loaded up in a specific area going to a certain region, and freak snowstorms happen in Wyoming and Montana. And it's exactly what happened in this specific scenario, where we told our driver, like, hey, FYI, it's Wyoming in September. Like, you just never know. Pack warm clothes just to be safe. And the dude didn't listen, because he's like, man, I'm in Texas. It's 100 degrees down here. Legitimately, freak snowstorm happened the night that he was up there, and all he had was shorts. So, he kind of had to deal with that in that moment. But again, like those are the situations that I think about. And like, it's more of just getting people prepared and pay attention to these weather patterns that are out there, right? Because just because we don't think it's going to affect us doesn't mean that it's not. And again, I just want, and then because like we used to move a lot of freight over Donner Pass in Lake Tahoe area, and that is another area, man, that just turns
out there. Yeah,
dude, it's an absolute nightmare when some of those storms hit. And sometimes a lot of it's like there's drivers that will have to route to go down through Las Vegas and come up through the Central Valley of California, depending on how critical their shipments are. So again, paying attention to these things and just giving people just a common courtesy heads up, I think is worth its weight in gold here.
100% for brokers, especially. I mean, some of the 3PLs that we work with, a lot of it is about customer service, like being able to provide something to tell your customers that there's going to be, significant delays due to weather, and then also providing that information to your drivers, to your carrier partners, to let them know that there's going to be issues, and also automating that process. That's a lot of what we do at Weather Optics, which is rather than having to stare at a map and look at the weather, every hour, we connect with your TMS, we connect with your routing provider, we connect with your ELD, and then you're able to set up thresholds within Weather Optics. So you can say, hey, Weather Optics, alert me every time the snow is going to be over 3 inches, or there's going to be a winter storm warning. And then that can kick off a whole host of actions that is sent throughout your organization that lets them know that there's expected to be issues, and here's who we need to tell about those problems. So not only are we trying to give you the best weather information, but we're trying to automate that process so you have to do less and less work.
So I'm trying. So when you say a TMS, are you guys doing like carrier TMSs as well, like telematics devices? Are you guys integrating in with that? Because, again, I think that would be something that's cool. And if you have this, please cut me off. But like, I think if you just integrate it inside with an ELD, and then it show, and then you pump in the lane that you're about to drive on, and that it gives you warnings like, hey, FYI, 24 hours from now, there's severe weather, yada yada yada. Is that something you guys do?
Exactly. We integrate with all the top ELDs, and we're trying to build new integrations all the time. But we have like, Platform Science, Geotab, Motive, Samsara, Trimble. We're integrated with all of those companies. And so we're able to track where trucks are going, where trucks currently are. And then we're able to shoot off alerts both to the driver, then to the back end folks as well, to let them know that there could be potential issues.
Yeah, I think that, especially with the amount of places that you go into that are by appointment and everything else. And then if you miss it, you're there for 4 days or whatever that looks like. Again, I think a lot of this is just getting ahead a lot of every issue that we possibly can. And weather is something that's constantly going to affect us in our industry, in every industry. Are you guys working with other industries at all, Scott, or are you guys mainly within the transportation space?
We started with supply chain, but as you know, supply chain covers a lot, right? Like every industry has some sort of supply chain. So naturally, we've worked our way into insurance a bit, into emergency response, emergency preparedness, government a little bit. So we certainly are doing things outside of strictly what you would consider transportation and supply chain. But I don't know if retail. I mean, that I also consider that to be supply chain. But there's a couple other areas where our risk scores and our transportation data, even for industries outside of transportation, ends up being really important as well.
Yeah. Now, so like, what are some patterns that you guys have noticed? Because if you guys are out there compiling all of this data, is there any weather trends that you guys pick up on that are kind of outside of the normal? And this isn't me trying to say debunk global warming or anything like that, but like, I look at it as like, there's so much seasonality in everything. And to me, it's identifying where the seasonality is so you can kind of apply it inside of your business. Have you guys noticed any patterns that happen almost like regularly there. It's like, hey, it's July in Georgia. 17 days are going to be torrential downpours. Hypothetical example.
Yeah, I think the most obvious, and you already mentioned it, but is when I-80 up in Tahoe closes down. It's remarkable how often and consistently that happens. And I think I read somewhere that for every day, I-80's closed down up there, there's about $100 million in losses because there's so many goods that are moving in and out of that region that a shutdown, a day or two shutdown, is incredibly expensive for a lot of these companies. So that's a really obvious one. The other one that's less obvious and more interesting is that more incidents and shutdowns happen in spring and summer than they do in winter. So a big misunderstanding is that like the warmer months are safer for drivers and a bit better, but hydroplaning and sudden thunderstorms and rainstorms, those are actually some of the biggest threats to drivers and folks in the transportation space. And when it comes to winter, people are actually a lot more prepared. So you think that big snowstorms across the country, yes, they shut down a lot of things, but it is actually those sudden rain events that are a lot more impactful sometimes.
So how are you able to really kind of get it? I mean, I know sudden and unexpected. I know what the definition of that means. So I don't want my next question to, but I went to public school, Scott. So sometimes I'm a third grader when I speak. Because I look at it as like here in Arizona, it's monsoon season right now, right? And we're like where I live in the Phoenix Valley, they call it the Valley, where I live, like all the storms build right by my house. So it's like, there's some days, man, where it looks like it's going to be absolutely insane. And then it just blows right over and everything else. But then there's other days where it's like, oh, hey, this isn't too bad out. And then boom, it's a black sky, torrential downpours. This shit comes out of nowhere. So with those being said, like, do you guys have any kind of like the national weather system, right? Where it's like, hey, dust storm in your area or whatever that looks like. Are you guys building those type of alerts inside of Weather Optics to where it's like, hey, this storm is intensifying, shut your truck down, get off the road as soon as possible, stuff like that?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest issues that we're trying to tackle at Weather Optics. We have this model that we recently introduced about 4 or 5 months ago called Hyper. And I'm going to get a little weather nerdy on you, but it's really cool in the fact that it takes observations from all around the country. So we're looking at actual real-time weather observations everywhere. We're looking at radar data everywhere. So where it's raining, where wind gusts are high, all of that. And then we're looking at these predictive models that the government produces. So some of the ones that you're talking about, like from NOAA and the National Weather Service. And then we basically do a comparison of the two. So we're looking at what is this model predicting? And is this actually happening on the ground? And then we bias correct that model every 15 minutes. So for example, if that model is saying over your house, there's not going to be a thunderstorm. It's going to move past you to your north. And all of a sudden, there's a radar station not so far from you that picks up that there is rain actually happening by you. Our model will correct and then produce a different forecast that says, hold on a second, there actually is going to be a storm here. And then we can alert drivers much faster. So we basically take a lot of what NOAA does, and NOAA's incredible, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. They're really good. And then we apply our own kind of machine learning and data that we collect onto that model to create our own weather modeling that we call Hyper.
So I'm trying to think here, man. Like I feel like a lot of opportunity for you guys might go into like the critical space, right? Like the expedited style runs, you think medicines and everything else. And it, like having that data to me would almost be, crucial, right? Where it's like, hey, we actually got to stick a team on this because we got to go out of route 800 miles to avoid, kind of like in airplanes, right? Where they have the radar that's going on out there. And then they're like, oh, hey, your flight actually is going to be 45 minutes longer because we have this massive storm system. We got to fly around now and everything else. I follow a bunch of pilots on YouTube because I'm convinced, Scott, if I could go back, I'd be a pilot all over again but like, they talk about this stuff all the time, where like weather patterns and how this stuff just pops up mid-transit. Yeah. And then they got to reroute around, or they got to divert to a different airport because, all of a sudden there's a massive storm over a certain area and they're running out of fuel and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it to me is like, it's that contingency plan aspect of things that might be coming in, where it's like, hey, if you reach Cleveland and the storm hasn't hit yet, you're good to go. But if you hit there, you got to drop down to Columbus and then come up so you don't hit weather and stuff like that.
Yep. I think that's completely true. And our whole goal is to try to simulate that plus any of that real time and predictive weather that's happening. So trying to intersect the two, here's your flight path or here's your truck path. And here's what our model is telling us the rain or the storm will intersect. And here's the actions that you should take to try to avoid that. So we're trying to get better and better at that process. And over the last couple of years, we've made, major strides in both the accuracy of the weather, and then also the capabilities of our systems to integrate with a lot of like the existing transportation infrastructure that's out there.
Cody brought up baptism by fire here in his comment about certain areas. And, and I think that a lot of it as well is that's a great way for you to, I think, expedite you being a true transportation professional with a lot of your customers is just, say if they're primarily a spot market style customer where it's all same day rate, truck in hand style pricing, being able to explain to them about how, because a lot of people, all they see is why is my rate $300 higher week, or why did it whatever that looks like. And I think you being able to explain to them that where it's like, hey, middle of this area, just gets blasted by a hurricane. So the driver's gonna have to shut down. It's going to add 2 days of transit onto that. Or if you want any driver to drive into that storm, there's going to be an upcharge associated with that. Because again, most people, this might come as a shock to others, like, they only look at how their area of the country is. They don't pay attention to anything else, right? So it's like having all data out there to be able to justify any form of changes in pricing, or, hey, transit time could take up to 7 days on this one due to the fact that this storm is possibly hitting there, so they might get shut down, or whatever that looks like. I think any data, any further information besides we just need more money, that's how you really separate yourself out there. That's what really shows all of your customers why you are truly a step above everyone else out there.
Exactly. It's a competitive advantage. And so for 3PLs and brokers to be able to point to weather, as a reason that, prices might increase, or just giving their customers a heads up. I mean, I think that's something that isn't currently being done today. And so there's a huge opportunity for those companies to take advantage of data like the type of insights that we have, and really run with that.
So what's exciting coming up here for the rest of this year, man? I mean, we're already in August. If you're in the middle of something that you can't talk about, that's fine. But like, how are you guys looking to kind of finish the year with the data and the information that you guys put out there?
We have some really cool products coming out that we're getting ready to announce, and I'm happy to talk about a couple of them on here. The first is we have what we call a road status product that's coming out. So essentially what we do is we give all these risk scores for roads, right? So we're telling you, the risk on this road is a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10, and it's this dangerous. We're now taking data from all of the state websites, so all of the 511 websites, and we're telling you in real time the conditions of the roadways and if roads are going to be shut down or are currently shut down. So we deal with a lot of companies that I hear spend all day going on 511 websites, checking state by state, what's closed down, what's opened, where is it icy, where is it snowy. That is a headache. We are collecting all of that data for you, and then just going to present that in a very easy to understand way, and let you know ahead of time if there's going to be bad conditions. So that's our next big product. It'll come out probably in the next couple months, and certainly be ready for winter. So I'm very excited about that one.
So are you guys already integrated with a bunch of platforms, or do you have a bunch on your roadmap? I guess because this, I'm asking along the lines of like what people could do to get this signed up, and if you're already integrated with their TMS provider or their telematics devices or something like that.
Yeah, our biggest partners in that space would be Trimble. That's probably the biggest integration that we have. So a lot of Trimble products are using our data. Platform Science, Motive, Samsara, Geotab. Anyone who uses any of those services can integrate directly with our data, which is super exciting. Makes it a lot easier for the integration process. And it's like, switching on a button and you can get some of our data, which is really nice. And we're building new integrations all the time. So we take by request as well if we don't have your ELD or your TMS, or for shippers, even your visibility platform, like, a P44 or 4Kites, right? Like those are big integrations for us as well. So we try to make it as easy as possible for people to get Weather Optics data.
Perfect, man. Scott, I love it. I appreciate you taking the time to jump on. And, you know, again, Weather Optics is synonymous with any time any of my freight is affected by any of this weather out there. But how does anybody reach out to you guys to find out more about what you guys got going on?
Yeah, definitely. You can visit our website at weatheroptics.co. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always posting about the weather and freight. So yeah, Chris, appreciate you having us on.
Now, anytime, man, Scott, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out here today. You guys, we will be back tomorrow. We got a guest tomorrow, and I think we got a couple more later this week. I'm in the middle of, moving freight, you guys, so I don't have my guest lined up right in front of me here. But again, we're going to be doing this, you guys. The audio-only replay of this will be available at 1 p.m. Pacific time across all major platforms. So yeah, you guys, as always, if you guys got value in what you heard, subscribe to the show, you guys. Share it out there to your network, because if you see value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.